Look, Bumble knows you're exhausted by dating. All the must not take yourself too seriously and 6'1" since that matters. And what do I even say other than hey? Well, that's why they're introducing an all-new Bumble with exciting features to make compatibility easier, starting the chat better, and dating safer. They've changed, so you don't have to. Download the new Bumble now.
If you think of it as you have a freak out and you stay up there and the freak out keeps going and going and going, that's an emotional regulation problem. That's an emotional management problem. And it's generally helpful. And what we can teach our kids is how to talk through that in a way that, again, doesn't make an overestimation of the problem and an underestimation of your resources to deal with it.
Welcome to Season 6 of Flusterclux with Lynn Lyons, where we talk about a family's anxiety and all the big feelings, too. We tackle the serious stuff without being too serious, and I'm your co-host, Robin. I'm Lynn's sister-in-law, and I'm here to ask your questions.
And I'm Lynn Lyons. I'm an anxiety expert, speaker, mom, and author, and I've been a therapist for over 30 years. Parenting can be a Flusterclux, and I'm here to help you find your way. I'll give you concrete steps to take and the words to say.
Hey, Lynn.
Hey, Robin.
Let's do a listener question today.
All right, let's.
I think this is pretty common for families where one of the kids, let's call it what it is, it's kind of like a freak out pattern, a really big reaction that might not have a slow build up, but like a kind of a dramatic one.
Okay.
And I don't think that this is that rare, right? I bet that this is a pretty common thing, and it'll be really interesting to think about it from the lens of anxiety and emotional regulation.
You want to read it?
Yes.
Okay, I'm listening.
We've had 2 moments recently where my daughter unexpectedly panicked. I don't think of her as a super anxious kid, but we talk about worry since it can show up anywhere. These events, being so unexpected, made it harder for us to prepare or discuss that her worry might show up. There's kind of a lot there, isn't there, Lynn?
Mm-hmm. Yep, there is.
Okay, so here's the first instance. We were in Disney standing in line for her self-proclaimed favorite ride, and out of nowhere, she freaked out and would not get on, despite having done it before, too. And I tried to say it sounds like worry was showing up and trying to boss us around, but she didn't care and she wanted out immediately. And then another time, we happened to see a snake on a hike. I get it that snakes are scary to a lot of people, but then screaming, she refused to walk by the snake to get back to the car. Anything that moved on the rest of our walk was then a snake. And once again, discussed worry was showing up, but she's so deregulated at that point, I can't get her out of it. How do we deal with these unexpected issues?
All right. The first thing I would say about this, for one, is that I don't know how old this child is, but I'm guessing what? If we had to guess, what would we say?
8?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about too. And so the mom says, I don't see her as a super anxious kid. So that makes me think, do you see her as an anxious kid? Does she worry? How much does this thing show up? And what often happens is that people look at the freakouts as the main thing that they need to be dealing with. Like that's the problem. And if I were meeting with this family, I would say, well, when does worry show up? When does the anxious response show up in other less dramatic but pretty consistent ways? And then how does your family deal with them? Because remember, the goal is to pay attention to how a family accommodates it when it shows up rather than skill building.
I want to just interject because what you said, if you were talking to that family, when anxiety shows up, let's replace anxiety in that sentence with when rigidity shows up or avoidance shows up. Because this might be one of those things where your understanding of the word anxiety is so much more encompassing of many things. And it might be that if the mom sort of understood anxiety in a broader sense, that would be more useful to her.
Okay, you're exactly right, Robin. Maybe we don't see anxiety, finger quotes, showing up, but we do see rigidity, or we do see a need to have a lot of information ahead of time, or we do see big reactions, and they're trying to avoid those. So maybe, I don't know, but maybe this family, this parent has gotten good at sort of staying ahead of the big reactions by providing a lot of information. Now, one of the things that jumped out at me, the mom said, these events being so unexpected made it harder for us to prepare or discuss that her worry might show up.
Right.
Now, that phrase jumped out at me because what that may mean is the way that this family stays ahead of these big reactions is to give her a lot of pre-talk, a lot of warning. If worry shows up, they may be doing the disorder by trying to create as much certainty as possible.
In another episode a couple years ago, remember we sort of laughed where it's like, hey, are you an anxious parent? No, I'm not an anxious parent. Hey, do you like to control outcomes with your family? Well, of course. Managing outcomes. So even if it's not conversation, the parent is trying to like steer everything to manage an outcome, even that isn't in like communication with the daughter, but she's very much planning about it.
So when we say unexpected events, what that means is there was some content that showed up that sort of caught this mom by surprise. But what if there's some content that you know your daughter worries about? So just as an example, say we knew this kid didn't like to go to the dentist. Is there a lot of talking about it? Is there a lot of providing certainty? Is there a lot of information given? And so for one, let me just repeat, because I say this a lot, how to deal with a freak out is far less important or interesting to me because people say like, how do we deal with these unexpected issues? The question the mom asked, or how do I calm her down when she's freaking out? That's not the interesting question to me. The interesting question to me is, how does she keep freaking out? And how are you trying to prevent her from freaking out? And then every once in a while, something unexpected gets away from you. Let me take this in two parts. So let's just take the example of the snake. So she sees a snake, right? And it startles her, and a lot of people don't like snakes. And then the issue becomes, how does she stay in that freak out place? Or how does she then become rigid in her response to it? And how do we help her have a different response to seeing a snake?
Can you break it down with literal snake moments and snake language so that we know what you're saying?
Yeah. Can I use rats instead of snakes? Because I have a really good example of this with rats, because I hate rats.
You hate rats.
I hate rats, and I don't mind snakes at all. Like I had a rattlesnake go right by my leg in Virginia. There was a python that came right across our trail when we were in Australia. And of course, I was like standing back from the snake, but it didn't freak me out. But rats, oh my God. The example that I give is that when my parents had an apartment in Boston, and I would very often go see them, and I would be walking back to the parking garage at 8:00 on a Sunday night, and it was dark, and there are a lot of rats in Boston. There are a lot of rats in a lot of cities, but in this part of Boston too, there's like a lot of nooks and crannies. It's like the Thomas's English muffin of neighborhoods in Boston. I was pretty sure that I was going to see a rat, and I did see rats. And so I expected that I was going to see a rat. I expected that I was going to have a very strong, immediate, like, reaction to the rat. I expected that my heart rate would probably go up a little bit. And then I would continue walking to my car because I knew that rats could show up, and I knew that I hate rats, and I knew that I would have a reaction. But what I didn't do was say to my parents, I can't come and visit you in Boston. Or if I come and visit you in Boston, I have to leave your apartment during daylight hours because I can't tolerate seeing a rat. What I had to do was accept that I could see a rat, that it was going to freak me out, that I was not going to like it, but then I was going to continue moving forward to go to my car and continue going to see my parents.
This brings up to me the $1 million question that my kids actually asked me last night in reference to, we were talking about an episode we had done. And my daughter said, how does one truly become okay with being uncomfortable? And I was like, practice, practice, practice.
That's correct. And one of the phrases that people use a lot that you will notice that I don't use, and I love that your daughter said okay with being uncomfortable, because what people often say is you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Well, right away, then we've used the word comfortable again. We have to be okay with being uncomfortable. And the way you do that is exactly right. Practice, practice, practice. But you also accept that unexpected things are going to happen, that there are things that you're not going to like. There are things that are going to freak you out. There are things that are going to sort of take you by surprise. but it is that global catastrophic reaction that keeps the dysregulation going. The difference between this girl seeing a snake and me seeing a rat, and believe me, I hate rats, is that I said, okay, I'm going to see a rat. The rat's going to run by. I'm going to squeal like a little baby, which I did. But I didn't then say, there are rats everywhere, which there are actually. I mean, I bet there are a lot more rats in that neighborhood in Boston than there are snakes on that hike. I didn't then continue to freak myself out by deciding that I couldn't walk on that street, or I couldn't go at that time, or that I had to guarantee that I wouldn't see rats. And that's what happened with this girl, is the way she stayed freaked out and the way then she began to make rules for what she could and couldn't do. She can't walk in that place. She can't go back to the car. Maybe she would even say, I'm never going to hike on that trail again because I might see a snake. That's what keeps this thing going. What we want anybody to learn is that expectation of there are going to be things that freak us out. And then what do we say to ourselves? What do we say to our kids that actually allows the freak out to happen? And then not calm down, but how do we make sure that we are not being global and catastrophic? And how are we helping kids to step away from that content in order to regulate their response? Let's take a break, Robin. And then when we come back, I'll walk you through that process. Robin and I travel a lot, and part of traveling is that you learn that you have to compromise, right? So maybe you're not going to get the best seat on the plane. Well, you know where you shouldn't compromise? You shouldn't compromise with your health care. When it comes to your health, there's no compromising, everybody. Don't go back to that one doctor who didn't really pay attention to you, who rushed you through your appointments. Check out ZocDoc. This is the place where you can find and book doctors who will make you feel comfortable, listen to you, and prioritize your health. And you can search by location, availability, insurance, so literally no compromises here. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare highly rated in-network doctors near you and instantly book appointments with them online. Once you find the doc you want, you can book them immediately. You don't have to wait. You don't have to be on hold with a receptionist. These doctors all have verified reviews from real patients. So the typical wait time to see a doctor booked on ZocDoc is just between 24 and 72 hours. That's it. You can even score same-day appointments. I have 2 young adult sons. They are always needing something, right? We've had broken elbows. We've had tonsils. We've had this. We've had that. If I were a young person, if I were a parent trying to help my young person find a doctor, this is what I would use. So go to ZocDoc.com/Fluster and download the ZocDoc app for free. Then find and book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/Fluster. ZocDoc.com/Fluster. If you are a mom who's trying to keep your calendar organized, keep your family's appointments where they need to be, then I'll tell you, the Skylight calendar is a product that you ought to check out. You know how it is. Running a household can be pure chaos and it can be so stressful. This is why you need to check out the Skylight calendar. It is going to make your life easier, Mom. It really is. The Skylight calendar is a smart touchscreen calendar and organizer for all your chores, groceries, to-do lists, and a great way to manage appointments to make sure they never overlap and they're never missed. It helps keep busy households on track so families can get time back for moments that really matter. The Skylight calendar is so easy to use and to set up. It's not going to frustrate you. You're going to be able to get it going within minutes. It syncs events from other family calendars, including Google, Apple, Outlook. You can add events directly using the touchscreen or with the free Skylight mobile app. Updates to linked calendars will automatically appear on the Skylight calendar at home. So no more worrying that you guys are going to forget something. No more cluttered paper calendars. It shows all family events together in one spot. The events are color coded so you can easily see what everyone has going on each week. When the calendar's not in use, you can turn it into a digital picture frame. It's 100% satisfaction guaranteed. If you don't love the Skylight calendar, you'll receive a full refund. They offer a 120-day money-back guarantee and free returns. You can't beat it.
I think the feature that I love most is the collaborative way we can all add to the grocery list. And then when I'm ready to place an online order, whether I'm at home or my office, I have that list and there's no more items that we forget.
So, as a special time-limited offer for our listeners, get 15% off your purchase of a Skylight calendar when you go to skylightcal.com/Flusterclux. That's SKYLIGHTCAL.com/Flusterclux. Mother's Day is coming right up, so order today to get 15% off your purchase at skylightcal.com/Flusterclux. Picture the thing that you've always wanted to learn, and now picture that you're learning it from the person who's literally the best in the world at it. It's fantastic, and that's what you get with Masterclass. I recently listened to Matthew Walker's talk on sleep and the importance of consistency with sleep. I loved Bobby Brown's Masterclass, gave me all these tips about putting on makeup because, I'm in front of a camera sometimes and I want to look good, and Bobby was such a big help. So this year, learn from the best to become your best with Masterclass. Don't just talk about improving. Masterclass actually helps you do it. Like, I actually put on makeup the way that Bobby Brown taught me how to put on makeup. This year, learn from the best to become your best with Masterclass. Don't just talk about improving. Masterclass actually helps you do it. Masterclass offers over 180 instructors. So whether you want to master negotiation with Chris Voss, think like a boss with Martha Stewart, or maybe you want to learn how to just make your makeup look better with Bobby Brown, or sleep better with Matthew Walker, with Masterclass, you get unlimited access to intimate one-on-one classes with the world's best. I loved it. There are over 200 classes to pick from. New classes are added every single month, like a class that talks about your gut health. So many interesting things to learn. So every new membership comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's absolutely no risk. Right now, our listeners will get an additional 15% off an annual membership at masterclass.com/Fluster. Get 15% off right now at masterclass.com/Fluster. Masterclass.com/Fluster. Okay, we're back. Okay, what we want to talk about is how we help our kids manage unexpected events. And remember, the rule is we don't try to give them all the information ahead of the unexpected event. Because the very nature of this question, the mom is saying, I didn't see this one coming. The process is the same. The content caught her a little bit by surprise. Just like a snake might catch you by surprise, a rat might catch you by surprise, though it shouldn't in Boston. Now, let's take the second part of this, where it was a freak out before this girl was getting on her favorite Disney ride. And it totally caught mom by surprise. And mom says, we don't know why. And again, I don't really care why, right? A lot of people would say like, what was going on? What was happening? Why were you getting so freaked out? Don't really care. The skill we want to develop is, how do we manage unexpected things? Now, Robin, you spend a lot of time in theme parks at Disney.
It's just that I'm a travel advisor and I send everyone to Disney and I know it cold. So let's talk about how an emotionally managed family using a lot of your techniques approaches a theme park day. Because I have to tell you that I literally had this exact experience happen. We were traveling with friends. We were approaching a ride. We had waited in the queue. And just as we were about to get on the Little Mermaid seashell,
terrifying,
my friend's daughter bolts out of the ride, out of the line, and out the building. And my daughter and I were so confused, but my daughter looks at me and goes, we have a runner. So we laugh about that a lot. My friend's daughter had an exact same reaction as this question. So I knew it's just not that uncommon.
Right. It's not that uncommon. We kind of have two categories here. The first thing is, so this is a parental differentiation skill. When you go to a theme park, if you've got little kids or whatever, nobody has to go on every ride. And so you're allowed to pick and choose what rides you go on because there are certain rides that just aren't your thing. For me, for example, I know which rides are more likely to make me feel nauseous, or I know which rides are not going to be fun because the goal is for it to be fun. And so it really is okay with your family to talk about what rides are a good fit and what rides aren't. And then we also want to give kids the language that when you step onto a new ride for the first time, that you don't really know what it's going to be like. That there may be a part of you that's kind of curious because you've heard all about this roller coaster, or you've heard all about this Harry Potter ride, or you've heard all about this whatever. But there's a part of you that's really a little nervous, a little uncomfortable, maybe a lot nervous about going on this ride. And so it is a bit of an experiment, isn't it? And giving kids the language to say, we're going to try this and we don't know exactly how it's going to go is a really great way to use the theme park experience for that. If you go into it saying, I'm only going to go on rides if I know exactly how it's going to feel and exactly how it's going to be, that means you're never going to go on a new ride. Now think of that as a metaphor for how we have kids step into new things. Because what happens in anxious families, what happens in families with a lot of worry, is that their life becomes experiences in which we already know how it's going to go. The story of the family that only went to the one chain restaurant for 10 years. The family that only goes to a certain place and goes on certain rides because they already know how it's going to go. How do we use the language of, let's step into this experience with not knowing? Now, say you go on a ride, you might love it. You might go on a ride and you might hate it. There was a ride at Disney that I went on. The thing itself did not move a lot, but it was the screen in front of you. Is there a Simpsons ride at Universal?
Yes. A lot of adults would feel very motion sick from that ride.
Yeah. Okay. So that surprised me because I didn't think I was going to feel so motion sick on that ride. And boy, did I. So guess what, everybody? I'm not going to go on that ride again. It wasn't fun. I got sick, but it wasn't an emergency. It wasn't a tragedy. It wasn't a disaster. It was an adjustment that we make.
I had an experience last summer. We went on a ride, the newer Disney Guardians of the Galaxy. We were by ourselves in Disney last summer, and a couple of other people said like, oh yeah, it's really intense, but it's amazing. It's really intense. So I was like, okay, I'm going to ride it. I don't want him to miss out on it. And then in the line, I was having a full on like, okay, I'm a little nervous. I'm very nervous about being uncomfortable. What if it makes me feel badly the way Space Mountain does now with age? I just don't feel good on those rides. So I was like, I don't know how I'm going to feel. My son at the time, 10 or 11, he's like, this is just your worry talking. It's like parroting the little Lynn Lyons satellite right back at me. And I was like, no, I know. And I went ahead and verbalized it because I was like, let's use this as a moment to just be like, I'm really nervous about this ride, but other people say it's so great. I bet there's some fun to be had. But right now I'm very uncertain what that is. And it's making me uncomfortable. And then within like 5 seconds of the ride, it's like my favorite ride. So I was like, how do I make this again a teaching moment? Thank you for providing the comfort that you gave me. And I'm so glad I tried something new because it was one of the most joyful ride experiences I ever had.
Mm-hmm. That's what you said to them after.
Yeah. And I had to take that risk. And I'm so glad I took that risk of something that I didn't know.
I had a similar experience where I took my kids to Universal by myself, just the two of us, in July. But we ended up on that great big roller coaster at Universal, like the Rockin' roller coaster or whatever, like it goes straight up and goes down. And I really hadn't been on a lot of big roller coasters, but I was by myself with my two boys. So I didn't have a choice to opt out. I just had to get on it. So they're sitting together behind me and I'm sitting in front next to this young guy. He was probably like 20 or whatever. And I said to him, I'm really nervous. I mean, I feel like I literally thought I was going to wet my pants. Like I was so nervous. And I got on and I said, like, how is this? Have you been on this before? Seeking reassurance. And he's like, oh, it's not so bad. It's really fun. It's not so bad. You're going to love it. I go, oh, okay, thanks. And we go over the first hill and we're screaming down. And I turned to him and I said, you are a big fat liar. Then we finished the ride, like once I got over that initial, and I loved it. And then we did it like 4 more times and it was so much fun.
No way.
Yeah, no, I totally loved it. Yeah.
I thought you were about to drop an F-bomb the way that story was going. It didn't.
Well, I may have just edited myself. I may have really said an F-bomb. And then afterwards, like my kid said, like, see, Mom, you were so nervous. And then you screamed at that guy, but then we had a lot of fun and we should do it again. And when you're modeling that, you're modeling that it's okay to be uncertain. It's okay to be uncomfortable. And it's okay to go on a ride and not like it. It would have been perfectly fine for me to say like, oh, guys, I can't handle that. With this mom, with this daughter, it's sort of showing up unexpectedly. There's not a lot that you can do in the moment. I've also been at Disney, and maybe you have too, where there are kids screaming in the line and they don't want to go on the ride and the parents are like dragging them and putting in the line. That's not a good idea either. And with younger siblings, sometimes they watch their older siblings or their cousins do it. And that's how we learn, right? So they're having the experience by watching it.
But that's a very different attitude than a family with like, you've got a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old. And you're like, you have to ride this because your 10-year-old sister wants to ride it too. Well, that's not really a great recipe. Be flexible about it.
When this daughter was having this experience, she didn't want to get on the ride. She saw the snake that scared her. I think that mom was probably surprised at the intensity of the reaction, that it was so big. I would really want them to pay attention to other places where it shows up in smaller ways and perhaps the family accommodates it a little too much. I'm not sure if that's happening, but also just know that one of the goals is not to prevent freakouts. I mean, obviously, there are things that we don't have to do if we don't like to do them, right? If somebody said, we're going to go on a rat tour of Boston, I'm not going to do that. But the thing you want to really pay attention to, like I said previously, is how did she keep the freak out going? So say she was in the line and she decided for whatever reason she didn't want to get on the ride, not the end of the world. And she says, I can't do it. And she refuses to get on the ride. Okay, that's okay. But it's I'm going to freak out about this. So I see a snake, I'm going to scream. I'm going to freak out. It's going to be a disaster. It's a crisis. It's an emergency. We want to take it down a notch. You see a snake, it scares you. Oh my God. You're about to get on a ride that you've done before. And for whatever reason, it's just not appealing to you. You go, you know what? I'm going to opt out this time. You want to give your kids practice stepping into things. And then sometimes they have to do them. Other times they don't. But it's the sustained freak out that I'm most interested in. The sustained freak out.
You know, when you're listening to a song on the radio and you just have this feeling that the song was written about you or that it was someone that you love trying to say something to you? Well, now imagine the power to gift that same incredible feeling to someone you love with an original song that actually is about them and about your relationship, and that Songfinch writes just for you. Songfinch lets you create an original radio quality song inspired by your own life and the people that you love. It's completely unique, it's personal, and it lasts forever. I had the pleasure of creating a family song with Songfinch about our summer celebrations that we have every year. I knew it was going to make everybody cry, and it certainly did. I got to be honest, I was even crying, giving all of the information and helping personalize my song with the writer that I chose. He absolutely delivered a beautiful acoustic song that captured exactly what I was looking for, and it was so fun to share with the family. So whether your song is for Father's Day, an upcoming graduation, a wedding or an anniversary, or even just a gift to show your loved one how much you care, start your song now to lock in one of Songfinch's top artists. don't waste another dollar on more stuff. It only takes 4 to 7 days, but that song will last forever. For a limited time, Songfinch is letting our listeners upload their song to Spotify for free, so you and the lucky person or people can listen to it anywhere, anytime. So go to songfinch.com/fluster and start your song. After you purchase, you'll be prompted to add Spotify streaming for your original song for free, a $50 value. Again, the URL is songfinch.com/fluster. Don't forget to share your song with us too in our Facebook group, songfinch.com/fluster. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath, and on the app, it lets you know if you are burning fat or carbs, and it gives you a tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workouts, sleep, and even stress management. So how Lumen works is that you breathe into the Lumen device first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fat or carbs. And then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals, so you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And Lumen will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game. I love the extra data that I'm getting about my health right now. Because for many women of my age, as we are going through a long chapter of hormone changes, Lumen's helping me use my body's data to make the best choices. So your metabolism is your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food you eat into the fuel that keeps you going. And because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does, optimal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, and better sleep, which is key. So Lumen gives you recommendations to improve your metabolic health. So what is metabolic flexibility and why should you care? Well, the key to metabolic health is something called metabolic flexibility. We love flexibility at Flusterclux, and that's where Lumen really shines. It refers to your body's ability to efficiently switch between using different fuel sources like carbs and fats. And there are preferred times to use each, and how well you can switch places you on the metabolic flexibility spectrum. So after getting to know you through your breath, Lumen gives you a metabolic flex score that you can track and improve upon. So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me and use Fluster to get $100 off Lumen. That's LUMENDOTME. And use Fluster at checkout for $100 off. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode.
Okay, so now back to the show.
So what's interesting sometimes is to replace the emotion. If we're talking about anxiety, sometimes it's interesting to replace that with anger. It's very clear and easy to understand, to learn to manage your anger, to express like, I'm really angry right now is a lot better than banging your fist against a wall. So is the ability for this little girl to say, you know what? I'm opting out right now. If she learns to have that response with a ride, I think it's kind of harder to apply that to the snake because she can't opt out of being next to the snake. I'm opting out right now. If she's learning to manage that response, is that also putting her on the same path that's helping her manage the discomfort? Or is she simply like, are those still two different things?
Being able to express what's going on with you emotionally without freaking out is a really good skill. And that's a skill you learn over time, right? This is why I say toddlers are so exhausting and so entertaining because they have no emotional management skills. So it's a skill that you learn over time. Is this an emotional management issue that when something happens that takes her by surprise or that is unexpected, that she totally freaks out? Let's just take the snake example, right? She sees a snake and she's like, oh my God, that snake was so scary. It totally freaked me out. And everybody goes, I know. Oh my gosh. Well, whoo, but boy, those snakes. And then you go on, right? So that's expressing how freaked out you were. That's expressing how, oh God. And then you sort of move on with it. And I think that's what you're talking about. And we could take that with anger, right? I was so angry about this, but I didn't take a baseball bat and smash up my house or smash up the windshield of the car that cut me off. So being able to express it, that's emotional literacy, and then being able to carry on.
Do you think that if you're managing that response, if you don't go to an elevated state, if you're regulated enough, that's what's enabling you to consciously choose to move through it and move beyond it and stay in your prefrontal cortex.
Correct, exactly. And it's really allowing you to regulate again. If you think of it as you have a freak out and you stay up there and the freak out keeps going and going and going, that's an emotional regulation problem. That's an emotional management problem. And it's generally helpful. And what we can teach our kids is how to talk through that in a way that, again, doesn't make an overestimation of the problem and an underestimation of your resources to deal with it. So then the second part of what you asked, Robin, is if you allow somebody, or if somebody has the language to say, oh, I'm opting out of this ride, or I'm not going to do this, does that support avoidance? Remember, it's not all or nothing. There are things that are totally fine to avoid because there are things in life that are optional. And it's really okay. When worry becomes a problem and when avoidance becomes a pattern, it's when you start avoiding things that are actually either necessary, perhaps enjoyable, important for relationships, important for your learning. So not going on a ride, okay, but deciding that you're not going to go into the cafeteria of school. And if you have a kid that's saying, I'm opting out because the cafeteria is too overwhelming for me, so I'm not going to eat lunch in the cafeteria. Or school is too overwhelming for me, so I'm going to make the choice not to go to school. That's going to be more of a problem. In summation, the way we want to handle unexpected, and I'm making air quotes, unexpected freakouts. The reason I think that sometimes people think they're unexpected is because they didn't get an opportunity to do all their pre-worry talk ahead of time, which I don't want them to do either. But the thing you want to pay attention to is, are you giving your child opportunities to step into unfamiliar, uncomfortable things and letting them process it? If I were with you when that snake showed up, Mom, I would have said to your daughter, so right now we saw a snake. That was surprising. Right now, you are making this into an emergency. And I might even say that afterwards. I might do a little post-game analysis. And I might say, you know what, that freak out about the snake, and then you were screaming and running around and you wouldn't walk. You turned a snake sighting into a full-blown emergency. And that's what we have to work on, because it wasn't an emergency, but your brain and your body got the message that it was. What would we do next time if you see a snake when you're hiking? I don't think you have to go up and pick up the snake and give the snake a kiss, but just like when I see a rat, right? I'm absolutely going to do that. I'm absolutely going to go, I'm going to get this visceral reaction, and then I'm going to keep moving forward. That's the difference. When we promote things to an emergency that aren't an emergency, that's when we get sustained freakouts. And that's what anxiety is. That's what worry is.
I love that, Lynn. I was just talking with another friend today about the ability to see fake emergencies is huge. And when I also wonder, because, we only see this listener question, we don't have more information than that. Maybe the freakouts, because they sort of impact what the family's doing, are what they notice, but maybe there are outbursts of other emotions too, like anger. But that doesn't necessarily disrupt a family plan or a hike or going on a ride too. But I think the culture of talking about emergencies and not creating them is a very healthy thing.
Yeah. I think this idea that anxiety's job is to promote things that aren't emergencies into emergencies. And that's where we get the freak out. And people want to avoid the freak out. They get embarrassed by the freak out. They think the freak out is some sign of some awful thing and they don't want to have the freak out. But I think the bigger picture is, are you helping your child differentiate between what's an emergency and what's not an emergency, and what's the appropriate response?
I was just about to say that. This comes back to that brilliance and importance of the skill of differentiation.
That's right. Michael Yapko. I was so fortunate to have him as my teacher, to be a part of my understanding of how to work with families right at the beginning of my career. And this is a concept that he helped me understand that I will tell you was life-changing for my career, and it will be life-changing for your family. A non-poisonous snake is not an emergency, but you have a child who acted as if it were. The same example with spiders. In New England, we do not have poisonous spiders, but I've got clients that if they see a spider in their room, they won't sleep in their room for a week. That's turning something into an emergency that's not an emergency. What we want to work on is over and over and over again in all sorts of venues, hikes and cities and amusement parks and schools and the dinner table and restaurants, all these opportunities to help you maintain and learn and understand that very valuable perspective and to recognize that worry and anxiety do not play by those rules at all. It's your job as a parent to help your kids differentiate.
Can I just say that for anyone who knows us, I think it's hysterical that I keep going to the Disney rides and you keep going to the hike.
I know, because that's sort of how our lives are.
Yes.
Well, and what's funny is that this question was a hike and a Disney ride. It was like, this is for Lynn and this is for Robin.
That's right. So I love that you certainly know how to promote joy and connection on hikes. And I feel like I do a pretty good job as well on these kind of family vacations. And as we're getting closer to summer and we're thinking about this, I love, love, love the knowledge you have shared with me about the importance of play. It is all about the importance of play and laughter and how important it is to remember to have those laughter moments on those nervous rides or nervous hikes, not teasing, but laughter and play and silliness. And those tools have been incredibly helpful when we have tested our kids to new experiences, whether it's like a new type of roller coaster or whatever if it was, to be silly and not teasing. I repeat it again. Silly is not sarcastic and teasing, but to be silly and fun and playful, even if you're faking it, it will eventually become the real thing.
Well, and also that when something like this happens in the post-game analysis, being able to laugh at yourself, being able to laugh about it, being able to recognize it as the pattern that it is, really takes away its power. The ability like, oh gosh, oh my God, I totally freaked out at that snake. Oh my God, my worry showed up and totally got me. And you can talk about it in a way that you give yourself and your family a little bit of grace and space to just see the humanity of it and to see the humor in it and not take everything so seriously. Because remember, that's what worry wants to do. Worry wants to be so serious about everything. So it's okay.
On that trip with my son and I by ourselves, my son was sick. He got sick at the last minute and we were about to go on a cruise ship. He made a comment too, because I was like, I'm going to run to the pharmacy and get some medicine for you so you feel a little better. And he was like, was this your anxiety that made you buy 2 different brands of every medicine that dealt with my symptoms? And I said, yes, this was an anxiety buy. He's like, yeah, just checking.
Oh my God. Your kids don't miss a trick at this point, right?
We embrace that we all do it. We laugh about it. And I think I have pretty good awareness of it because it doesn't really stop us from doing anything, but that doesn't mean it still doesn't show up. Just like it shows up for you too.
Of course. Yeah, it shows up for me too. It certainly does. All right. So as we sort of get closer to summer, I'm sure we'll be talking about play more. And let me just say this too, is that we love the emails and the comments that people send us. And if there is a topic of an episode that you really want us to take on, please send it. People put great questions on the Facebook page. And as I've said before, a lot of them end up as episodes because they're so wonderful. So please keep sharing your questions and your thoughts and your ideas because it really helps us generate ideas. Thanks for listening. And if you found this podcast helpful, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find this information.
And if you'd like to dig deeper on any of these topics, we have specialized playlists on our Spotify profile, and the link is in the show notes. Topics like teens, depression, and OCD. Bye, Lynn.
Bye, Robin.
If you're a parent, I invite you to join us at the Mindful Mama podcast, where it's all about becoming a less irritable, more joyful parent. With sometimes hilarious and always thought-provoking experts and friends, at Mindful Mama, we know that you cannot give what you do not have. And when you have calm and peace within, then you can give it to your children. I'm Hunter Clark Fields, and I can't wait to see you there. Listen in to the Mindful Mama podcast.